Then what are we waiting for?
You guys ready?
Let's go!
Look at me, can't you see? I'm a real match for reality. Look at you, I can see you're thirsty and worried about losing me.
So, you guys did it. A few months ago when I made Section 6, I said if that video did well enough, I would go ahead and make another team from ZZZ. No vote, just you guys coming through and showing support. And that video did pretty damn well, so here we are, building my favorite group in ZZZ, the Cunning Hares, and seeing just how they stack up in D&D. So, no beating around the bamboo, let's hop right in. Nicole Demara, the leader and founder of the odd job agency Gentle House, otherwise known as the Cunning Hares, doing anything from apparently working at KFC to protection work, straight up theft, and of course, holo raiding, which by the way is highly illegal if you don't have permission to do so because it is super dangerous. But there's also a lot of money to be made in holo raiding, and seeing as Nicole is always broke, she takes as many of these jobs as she can get. And of course, Nicole is not the only member of the Cunning Hares. She has her adoptive sister, Ambi Demora, a quiet, movie-loving girl that she quite literally found in the garbage. Billy, an old-world android that is obsessed with what I can only assume is a Power Rangers-esque anime called Starlight Nights, and the newest member, a goofy cat girl named Nekomata. And while Nicole does run a semi-successful business now, when she was younger, she was just a normal girl living in an orphanage in New Eridu. And unfortunately, this orphanage did not have a lot of money. Being unable to afford the treatment for one of the kids, Nicole managed to convince all the other children to run out into the city in search of enough money for said treatment. And unfortunately, while they didn't get enough money to save their friend, they did grant her wish of seeing the sun one last time by using all the coins they collected to reflect the sunlight from the street all the way into her room. And this is where Nicole's love of money came from. Not because she wants to actually be rich, well, I'm sure maybe there's a bit of that, but because seeing this, she learned that money can help people. And years later, after being adopted and growing up, she would create the Cunning Hares to do just that. Help people under the guise of getting rich. Because as scummy and money-grubbing as Nicole seems, she's still a decent person, she just really doesn't want to show it. Which is why, despite actually making a lot of money doing their work, the Cunning Hares are always on the cusp of bankruptcy. Nicole doesn't just stash her money away and sit on it. She spends it on her employees by actually paying them enough to get by, and even goes back to the same orphanage she grew up in and regularly takes out the kids on shopping sprees for things they need. And this tells us a lot about Nicole. Despite her seeming like a money-grubbing boss, she's actually a really kind person, she just doesn't always show it. And in my last video, I called Nicole a gold digger with a heart of gold, and I still think that fits. She's always got money on her mind, but not for the reason you might think. So after all that, I think it's pretty easy to say that Nicole is a human with the lucky feet. After all, she's somehow managed to keep the Cunning Hares running even with their high operating costs. I also went ahead and gave her a custom background called the Gold Digger for deception and persuasion as her skills. To go along with that, I gave her a stat spread something like this, with high intelligence and dex, along with some charisma, but she also dumps wisdom, partially because she doesn't really need it, but also because it just kind of seems right for Nicole. But moving on from that, I will say I am personally a little bit behind on the current ZZZ story, so I might be missing some stuff here. But when we are introduced to the Cunning Hares, Nicole, Anbi, and Billy are in the middle of a relatively simple job, at least on the surface. Break into the Red Fang Gang hideout, steal a lockbox, and get the hell out. And just like in any and every game of D&D, this quickly devolves into pure chaos as the team is cornered, flashbanged, and shot at by an attack helicopter, causing both Billy and Anbi, who we'll get to later, I promise, to fall from a building and into a hollow. And Nicole, not being able to rescue her team without a guide, goes to you, the player, Bell or Wise, as Faithin, to be her proxy and guide her to her team and eventually get them out. And this is where we get to see how Nicole handles herself on a job. She's not exactly a frontliner like Ambi, but she can still hold her own thanks to... Is this another suitcase? Let me guess.
What? It's also a gun.
Oh.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. So yes, Nicole's suitcase not only opens up and fires black holes at people, I'm pretty sure she just atomized those guys, but also explodes if anyone puts in the wrong code trying to open it. On top of this, Nicole is actually fairly intelligent, she just doesn't always use said intelligence in the right way. Along with that, she's pretty agile, just not to the same extent as Billy or Anbi, and she's clearly been doing this kind of stuff for a while and knows her way around a fight. So with all of this in mind, I think there are two classes that fit Nicole really well, and we're going to start off with the smaller one first, that one being the Rogue. Mostly just for expertise in deception and persuasion, after all she's got to be able to lie her way through things, but also for cunning action so she can dip out of the front lines if things get a little bit too close for comfort. But she's really not staying as a rogue for long, since the other class has pretty much everything else we need for Nicole, mostly her gun and explosives. And if you saw my Star Rail video, you know that I kinda teased this in there when I was talking about Himiko, but I'm going to be making Nicole an artificer. Because yes, it does cover the above mentioned things, guns and explosives, but it also gives Nicole a way to support her team in the way of infusions. She can give Billy bottomless ammo through the repeating shot infusion, upgrade Ambi's sword with a radiant or enhanced weapon, or make a few magical items for the team like a bag of holding, a cloak of protection, mostly for herself, and Eyes of the Eagle for scouting. But obviously the big thing here is the artillerist subclass, because the Eldritch Cannon and its Force Ballista option are a great fit for her suitcase gun, if you ignore the fact that Nicole may or may not spaghettify people when she does this. It does an initial 2d8 damage on hit and pushes them back, but once Nicole hits level 9 in the subclass, that goes up to 3d8. Not amazing, but she's really not here to dish out big damage. Level 9 also happens to be where Nicole gets Explosive Cannon so she can blow up her suitcase like she did when tricking some thugs. Tell them the wrong code, toss it their way, and watch them blast themselves into bits as they cause it to self-destruct. Not really an optimal choice in the middle of a fight, but if you've got nothing else, you might as well try it. Now that right there puts her around level 10, but I decided to give Nicole a few more levels specifically to get her spell storing item, which turns out to be a much better bomb, since she can just slap Fireball in her suitcase and let it go off if anyone but her opens it up. And on top of that, she gets another ASI at level 12. 2 of those are going into ASIs, and 1 of them goes into the Observant feat for a total of +4 intelligence and +1 dex. Meaning her spells are going to be really hard to avoid with a maxed out intelligence, and she has expertise in investigation thanks to Observant. And this is really all we get to see for Nicole when it comes to how strong or competent she is. No S-rank version of her like Anbi, no super crazy feats. She is still a good leader / support for her team, even if she is pretty snarky. So while she is far from the muscle of the group, Nicole can and will get the job done so she can get her paycheck and go blow it buying clothes and toys for kids. Just make sure you don't get in between her and her money.
That's my strongbox! Found it.
It's our lucky day.
That's my strongbox!
So I have sponsor segment written here in my script, but at least at the time of recording, we don't have a sponsor for this video, so I guess this one is sponsored by my patrons. You guys are awesome. We are so close to hitting 200 patrons, which would be amazing. That is the best place to support the channel if you want to, and you can get the build guides for all the characters I make here for just $1. And while we don't have a sponsor, we do still have our partnership with Homie and the Dude, along with our massive 35% discount on whatever you buy in their store. Right now they still have the Ghibli-inspired Wandering Tavern as their main product, but new stuff is very close and on the way. And when it drops, I'm sure you'll be hearing it from every corner of the D&D community because they are partnered with so many people in this group. Now we can go check in on Ambi real quick. Ambi Damara, the second member of the Cunning Hares, and Nicole's adoptive sister. I have no clue if Nicole convinced her parents to adopt her too, or just forged the paperwork herself, but either way, her and Ambi are really close, even if she never really opens up about her past, which must have been pretty rough considering Nicole literally found her in the garbage and helped Ambi get medical treatment. And the reality of Ambi's past is pretty dark. To avoid huge spoilers, I'm going to gloss over a lot of details here, but Ambi was once part of a special military program along with a bunch of her sisters. Spoiler stuff happened, and Ambi was left with a choice. Choose her own life or the life of one of her sisters. And going against direct orders, Ambi chooses to save her sister, only to get thrown out and later saved by Nicole, which is what led to her joining the Cunning Hares as their frontline fighter and combat expert. But outside of combat, Ambi is a huge movie buff and has a thing for burgers. She's also extremely close to Nicole, even if she can come off kinda cold, having a picture of herself and Nicole in her wallet that she's really attached to. But I think that's enough backstory for the moment, let's get into her stats. Just like Nicole, Ambi is a human, but this time with the tough feat given the injuries she survived to get where she is now. I think that's only fair. And no custom background this time, Ambi is a soldier, so she gets the soldier background along with the savage attacker feat for some more consistent damage. And while I was working on her stats, I did bounce between making Ambi more of a dex or strength based character, but for a few reasons I decided to focus her more on strength. So high strength, but her con and dex are both tied at 14 for now. So she can be pretty nimble given that she only ever really wears a breastplate, and has decent HP with a +2 in tough. And the rest of her stats are fine, but Ambi does have a pretty noticeable lack of common sense due to her upbringing, so she's gonna dump wisdom. That's 2 for 2, huh? Now I guess they're more like sisters than you'd think. But enough of that, let's get back to their job. When Ambi fell into the hollow along with Billy, she was honestly the furthest thing from afraid. After all, this is kind of her job, she's a hollow raider, but despite this, she knows it's still dangerous to be in the hollow for too long. No matter how strong you are, you can only stay in a hollow for so long before succumbing to ether corruption. So Ambi's goal was pretty simple: meet up with Billy, collect the strongbox that fell in with them, and get out. Thankfully, the first part was pretty simple. She just kind of ran into Billy after wandering around for a few minutes. But slight issue with the strongbox, it is being protected by a Red Fang Gang member, or I guess ex-member, since they get to watch in real time as he falls to ether corruption and turns into a huge ethereal. And despite this ethereal being a little bit too much for them to handle on their own thanks to all the other ones that are being drawn to the area, we do get to see Ambi fight here. And this, combined with the home movie the Cunning Hares made fighting off some thugs, we get a pretty good idea of how Ambi fights now. Oh, and just like in the Section 6 video, I do know that the elemental stuff is part of the gear they use and not something they have inherently like in Genshin or Star Rail, but I also don't like to assume that your DM is going to give you the right gear for the build, so I try to have that built into it myself. The only time that changes is when the item is necessary to the build, which hasn't really happened yet. So, these arcs of electricity coming off of Ambi's sword, I'll get that covered real quick. But first, we do have to cover the basics for Ambi's fighting style, which is really just one-handed sword fighting with some fancy maneuvers mixed in, which is pretty easy. After all, she is one of the very first characters you get to play, so she's not going to be too complicated. And I say that because, as per usual, when we have a simple character that smacks people a bunch, the best option is usually the fighter. So Ambi gets all the important stuff like action surge, the dueling fighting style, and maneuvers from being a battle master to cover a couple of things she does, like pulling Billy out of the way of an attack and blocking it herself for bait and switch, doing some fancy dodges, and tripping attacks. But she also gets her lightning sword really early at level 4, but not with the gift of the chromatic dragon like I used in the past. Instead, Ambi is going to change it up with the strike of the storm giant feature, letting her add 1d6 lightning damage once per turn to her attacks. Now technically this option is worse than Gift of the Chromatic Dragon, which adds a d4 for 1 minute, but that does cost a bonus action on your first turn, and this just happens once every turn. But either one works here if you want to swap them out. But as she keeps going, Ambi also gets a bunch more feats and ASIs from being a fighter, like the Charger feat for a bump to strength and more damage on her ult, Defensive Duelist for more strength and AC, and you don't have to take this one. I try my best to be as faithful to the characters as I can, so technically Ambi can dual wield even if she's more of a strength-based character. If you don't want to take dual wielder, you can probably just swap it out for Gift of the Chromatic Dragon for more lightning damage. It would probably be better. Anyways, Ambi is going to stay on the fighter for really the entire time, no multiclassing this time, but she is going all the way to level 15 for Relentless, meaning Ambi will never run out of her maneuvers as long as she is willing to drop the die down from a d10 to a d8, which will really come in handy during longer fights against boss ethereals. And all this means Ambi can make between 3 and 7 attacks if you want to use dual wielder, but maybe don't. And any of those attacks can have a maneuver on it, like tripping attack or pushing attack, adding more damage, one of which is free, so she might as well add on another one while she's at it. Assuming Ambi is using a one-handed longsword and action surging, she does 68 plus 42 damage thanks to the enhanced weapon from Nicole, plus 1d6 lightning and then another 1d8 adding from a free maneuver. And if she really wants to go all out, she can add another 5d10 if she lays on maneuvers on every single attack. It would blow through almost all of her superiority die in one turn, but adding that with the Charger feat is going to be an average of 104 damage. Swap out Dual Wielder for Gift of the Chromatic Dragon adds another 64 lightning damage, putting the average at 116. Now, while this might not be the most damage I've done on this channel, it is over half the amount of damage that Miyabi can put out in a full round without crits, and Ambi is not only 5 levels lower, but is still a 4-star character. Ambi might have a strange and honestly dark past, but she's found a great family with Nicole, Billy, and Nakamata, even if her and the cat don't always get along.
Why didn't you come help me when those thugs were attacking me and Ambi?
Didn't you tell me to record it?
You idiot! Where were you gonna show it if something happened to me and Ambi? At our funeral? Our dads can get us dead. Seriously, use your head next time.
Okay, halfway done, and since I've mostly covered the intro to the intro story with Ambi and Nicole, we're going to talk about some other stuff with Billy. Like the fact that before joining the Cunning Hares, he was the champion of the Sons of Caledon, yet another faction I'll have to make in the future. And the champion is a really important role in the gang, effectively being their enforcer, the strongest person in the gang who isn't the leader. And while Billy did eventually leave due to unspecified reasons, he still stays in regular contact with them and even considers their current leader, Caesar, his big sister, going so far as to give Caesar one of his spare arms to replace the one she lost as a child. It's even kind of implied that Billy influenced Caesar with his constant fanboying over the Starlight Knights, given some voice lines, but she could also just be a fan of the show herself. Now, something I mentioned earlier but haven't really touched on yet is the fact that Billy is not human. He's an android, a machine left over from the previous era before the Hollows, and is what is known as Lost Tech. The closest thing to him in the modern era would be Chingy from Public Security. And it's kind of implied that now that he's in the Cunning Hares and Ambi is able to take some of the weight off of his shoulders when it comes to combat, Billy can relax and goof around a bit, so he's likely a lot stronger than he lets on. And with all that, I think it's pretty clear what Billy is in terms of his background and species. Obviously, being a robot, the best and really only option for him is the Warforged, meaning Billy doesn't need to eat, sleep, drink, or any of the other stuff poor flesh and blood people worry about. And given that he came from a lost era, I gave him the Wayfarer background for the Lucky Feet. Now for his stats, I was kinda torn here. We know that Billy is super strong thanks to the fact that Caesar, who has one of his arms, could lift huge boulders as a child because of it. But at the same time, Billy fights using range, so while I wanted to jack up his strength, I decided it would be best for Billy to focus on dex for his gunplay. On top of that, high constitution for being a robot, and wisdom, since if Nicole and Ambi don't have it, someone's gotta have it. Now, as far as Billy's playstyle, he just kinda shoots people, either doing a barrage of normal shots or one big power shot. He also thankfully doesn't have an element I need to worry about, and same goes for ammo since Nicole can just put repeating shot in his guns and he's good to go. Plus they remind me of I think Alucard's big 50 caliber handgun, so he needs some high damage. And despite being a ranged build, Billy seems to handle crowds pretty well while still dealing solid damage. And I think to start off, just like Ambi, Billy is going to be a fighter, and if you want to make a bunch of attacks, they're kinda your best bet thanks to Action Surge. And given his status as the champion of the Sons of Caledon and obsession with the very Power Rangers-esque show, the Starlight Knights, I think Billy's best option is going to be the Samurai Fighter for Fighting Spirit, which lets him use his bonus action to give him advantage on all of his attacks for the next round. He's also going to take the Crossbow Expert feat, since usually guns are replaced with hand crossbows, or just see if your DM will let you use the gun rules. And at level 6, he's going to take the Sharpshooter feat for a combined +2 to Dex. And those 6 levels are as far as Billy is going to go into Fighter, since I really want to focus on how hard he hits with his guns, usually dealing high single target damage, but also having a few options if he does get surrounded. And for that, Billy is going to need Hunter's Mark, it's just free damage, and Colossus Slayer from the Hunter's Prey feature of the Hunter Ranger, which is just more free damage after the first round of combat. And the other part of that, Horde Breaker, is also great if he has to fight off multiple enemies because it just gives him a free attack against a separate target. And going further into Ranger, Billy is going to pick up Dual Wielder. Okay, why do so many of the Cunning Hares use 2 weapons? Come on, I swear I'm not giving Nekomata Dual Wielder, no. Anyway, yes, Dual Wielder for Billy so he can actually use both of his guns, and in this case it's actually not the worst, he is a Dex character, and that combined with the 2-weapon fighting style and archery fighting styles means he gets more attacks to trigger Hunter's Mark and Colossus Slayer, a title which I think is pretty fitting for this guy. Ranger also makes him more mobile with the roving feature, and a few other things, but they're more situational even now. And to finish off his build, Billy is going to take Defensive Tactics at level 7 of Ranger for Escape the Horde, meaning that AOOs don't hit as often, and if something does get up in his face to smack him around, they have disadvantage on all the attacks after the first one thanks to multi-attack defense. Oh, and he does take a +2 bump to his wisdom at level 8 of Ranger. And while I love Billy, I'm gonna be honest, his build isn't going to be doing as much damage as Ambi's on the surface. With a max of 5 attacks on one target for 5d6 plus 30 base, or plus 42 if Nicole puts both repeating and enhanced weapon on his guns, I'm assuming she doesn't though, then 1d extra for Colossus Slayer, another 5d6 for Hunter's Mark, that is an average of around 70 to 83 damage in a round. And while this isn't quite as much damage as Zombie per round, it is more reliable, since outside of Hunter's Mark, none of these things he's using for extra damage actually cost any resources. So while in a longer, more drawn out fight, Billy will outdamage her eventually, in a 1 or even 2 round burst, Ambi's gonna come out on top, assuming Billy doesn't give up 1 attack for a higher crit chance. And hey, Billy is still just vibing. He's not been pushed like his days back in the Sons of Caledon, and maybe one day we'll see what a real S-rank Billy looks like, and just how strong he really is.
Yo, yo, yo! Good morning, ladies! Rise and grind. Come on, Starlight Knights! Transformation!
Hey, hurry up, Billy! Just get your guns and let's get this over with!
Oh, okay, I'm coming! No time for a transformation again. Never mind, bad guys are waiting for a beating! Let's go! Let's go big and light up the starry sky!
And now all that's left is the cat girl. Nekomata, or just Nekomata, is a curious cat Thyrene that recently joined the Cunning Hares after some stuff happened. Nekomata used to be part of the Red Fang gang, you know, the guys that the Cunning Hares are currently robbing, but had a bit of a falling out with them after some changes in leadership and decided to go solo for a while. But even then, she's still respected and feared throughout the gang that even her just showing up to a Red Fang gang operation sends the thugs running. Usually Nekomata just spends her time relaxing, doing cat things, hanging out with an absolute horde of cats. That is, until someone broke into the Red Fang gang's base, stole their box, and inadvertently got one of Nekomata's friends killed. Yeah, you know the guy that Ambi and Billy saw get corrupted in like 10 minutes max? Yeah, that's Nekomata's friend. and she assumed that the Cunning Hares had intentionally killed him after leading him into a hollow and put in a plan for revenge. And after pretty easily tricking the Cunning Hares into letting her work with them, Nekomata intended to get them lost in the hollow themselves, only to find out that the Cunning Hares didn't kill her friend outside of killing his ethereal form, since there's no coming back from that. But a gunship, probably run by Hand or Pubsec, was the one that fired a missile at the building and blew them out of it. And on top of that, she found out that they're actually kind of nice people, endangering themselves to go looking for a lost girl that Nekomata lied about seeing to get them lost, even if it turns out that there actually was a lost child they managed to help. And seeing this, along with them endangering themselves to help people stranded in the hollow, kind of made Nekomata change her mind and decide to actually help the Cunning Hares and eventually join them as their newest team member. Now, given Nekomata's cat-like features, background as part of a criminal organization, and very speedy nature, I think her build is super easy. The Tabaxi are a race of cat-like people that are very nimble, have a climbing speed, claws, and the ability to just double their speed for a round, plus the criminal background for her time with the Red Fang Gang seems pretty fitting. And with stats focusing on high dexterity and wisdom, plus a little bit of charisma for her lying and general cattiness. This combo also happens to get her a ton of skills, and considering she's going to be focusing on the rogue as her main class, a lot of these are going to get boosted by expertise, like sleight of hand and stealth for the first one, and the next one coming at level 6 for perception and acrobatics. And the reason for her focusing on rogue is pretty simple. Look at how she fights. Quick and hard-hitting attacks that can leave her targets knocked on their asses or just stunned, letting her lay on the damage even more. She's also able to handle herself in a crowd pretty well, on top of using some form of kicks or at the very least scratches alongside her box cutter knives. I also think that given her soul status up until recently, she would work really well as a swashbuckler rogue so she can get her sneak attack even if she doesn't have any teammates nearby. Plus it just seems pretty fitting for the snarky cat girl that you're struggling to keep up with during the fight. So along with rakish audacity and fancy footwork, she also gets uncanny dodge so she can better avoid direct hits, evasion for dex saves, and reliable talent on level 7, so that by the end of this build, her minimum sleight of hand check is going to be somewhere around 25. She kinda has a thing for swiping wallets, Ombi's included. And of course, this includes one of my favorite new rogue features, Cunning Strike. And its upgrade improved Cunning Strike all the way at level 11, so she can trip attack, dip out of the combat if she needs to, and move on to another target. And with 11 levels of Rogue, that means she comes out of there with 3 ASIs, which I'm going to use to help make her faster with the speedy feat, up her claw and or box cutter damage with the slasher feat, and give her a +1 bump to dex and wisdom. And while the rogue part of her build does a good job at starting her build, I think if Nekomata is going to catch up to where she is in the game, or at least as close as I can get really, she needs to hop over to another class, one that would make her even faster. And that is going to be the monk, specifically the Kensei monk for a better focus on her weapons, but still letting her use her martial arts if she needs to. But more important than just the martial arts is going to be Stunning Strike from 5th level of monk to stun people with, which is just free advantage on all of her attacks she makes after hitting it, and she can make 3 attacks, which is a lot higher chance of hitting her sneak attack. This was also the best and possibly only way for me to give her the assault status, which if used right could really drive up Nekomata's potential damage. Because being a rogue and monk means Nekomata does kind of need crits to keep her damage up since she just has lower damage die overall. But even then she does deal some solid damage, with 4 attacks, each dealing 1d8 thanks to Path of the Kensei, making her box cutters also d8s, plus 1d8 from Death Strike, and plus 6d6 from sneak attack since she no longer needs advantage. And that is a total of 5d8 plus 15 plus 6d6 for around 64 damage, which is the lowest outside of Nicole, whose damage I didn't calculate. But not only does she have the fewest amount of attacks, she can also get advantage really easily with Trip Attack or Stunning Strike, making crits really easy for her to get. Plus, just like Billy, she can't really burst enemies down like Ombi can, but she will outlast Ombi's damage potential, not only because she's not spending any resources on her damage, but she has a lot more options for defense between Uncanny Dodge, Evasion, Agile Parry, and Fancy Footwork. Nekomata is going to be extremely hard to pin down and land any actual meaningful damage on. There is a reason this carefree cat girl is so feared by the Red Fang Gang and others like them. Sure, she's nice and goofy most of the time, but get on her bad side and you will see just what this silly cat can actually do.
Nekomata! When Silver finds out about what you've done, you're gonna regret this!
Whatever. I doubt I'll ever see him again. Actually, I doubt I'll see any of you Red Fang Gang guys again.
Remember, we took you in when you were just a stray! Ah!
Didn't I just tell you? We cats have our own pride. I'm not Red Fang Gang's pawn. I no longer approve of the things you do anymore. So, maybe we'll run into each other if you find the right path. I won't finish last.
And done! This team took a lot more work than I thought it would, honestly, and I'm still not 100% on Nekomata, but I'm sure you could make a few changes and up her damage by a lot. Anyways, as per usual, I'd like to thank my testers for looking over these things, my editor, the Goblin King, for, putting these videos together, and my patrons who made this possible for me to get an editor in the first place. You guys are all awesome, and I hope you stick around because I've got some new stuff coming, hopefully very soon. It's taking some work. That's gonna do it for today, though. I will see you all next time, and as always, have a wonderful day.